One. We are 1 day closer to real hockey on August the 1st. It's still weird, but hey, it's 2020. What do we expect? Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE. Follow the Hockey Podcast at podcast_hockey. And, of course, like us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast. And subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google. Heidi is with us. Hello, Heidi. How are you?
I am good. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm good. It is 942 degrees here in Burnaby. Still, it was 942 degrees last night when Devin and I recapped the Flames-Oilers exhibition game, which we'll get into. Is it still 942 degrees over there?
Yes, but it's nice in my basement suite.
Fair.
So, yeah, it's been a little bit warm. It's definitely not hockey weather outside, but what can you do?
No, that's true. But we are talking hockey on July 29th, and we are really excited to delve into a bit more where the Flames are at after their one exhibition game. And Ryan Pike from Flames Nation is joining us. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I am well, although it is it's not cool where I'm at. I'm not in a basement suite, and I don't have air conditioning, so I'm basically just sitting here going, "Oh goodness, if only it could be hockey weather all the time." But I don't know. We'll put up with 30 degrees for as long as it's given to us because the alternative is much worse.
Yes, I'm one that prefers the plus 30 over the minus 30. I have to admit, that's why I live out here, because, I will not experience minus 30, so I will take this and enjoy it. But, yes, you folks that live in Alberta may have to put up with a minus 30 more often than not. And also, I'm a wimp, so there. Let's maybe start with Heidi. Let's start. Didn't talk to either of you, obviously, yesterday, but what was kind of your takeaways from the game yesterday, and then we'll delve into some of the big issues that are going on with the Flames and some of the things that are going on.
All right. Well, for me, as I was mentioning before we hit record on this, by the time the game was over, I was kind of honestly over it a little bit. It might have been that I'd been outside also since about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it was starting to get a little warm outside. We brought the TV outside and actually had watched the game before outside, out on the patio. So that was actually kind of fun, and then watched the first period outside as well. But it was frustrating. The first two goals going in, and that whole first period, I was just not very happy that they were just the Oilers were off to a much better start than the Flames were. Second period looked a lot better. I was feeling a lot more hopeful, and then Rittich had that little slip up moment, and as soon as I knew that happened, I was like, the next shot in it is going to go in, because he gets so shaken up by things like that my hopes kind of got dashed again. But it was at least it wasn't boring per se. It got a little bit towards the end, but I expected, for it being an exhibition game and it being the very first game, that it was going to be kind of meh, especially since I watched a tiny bit of the Penguins and the Flyers game and the Montreal and Toronto game, and those games were actually very boring and had no intensity. So this one was a little bit better than that. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this game, whether I'm supposed to take it seriously or not. That's kind of just my thoughts. My thoughts are all over with this game.
I'm kind of similar, because, if you were going to sum up the game in an emoticon, it'd be a shrug, because I mean, going into the game, I think a lot of us who were around the team a lot went, I wonder how the goaltending is going to be. I mean, Cam Talbot was real good down the stretch, basically from February onward, and David Rittich was very, he was fine. And then Cam Talbot was super busy and faced 21 shots and was pretty good. I mean, the goals he gave up, one he just booted straight out. You know, I think it was a defensive lapse 90 seconds in where he gets sort of surprised by a shot, boots the rebound right into the slot, and Elias Lindholm gets beaten out to a loose puck by Kyler Yamamoto, who, spoiler, is very good and very fast. So please don't try to ever win a foot race with Kyler Yamamoto. You probably won't be able to. And, you know, he got to a loose puck. Talbot couldn't get all the way back into the net to save it. So that's one. Other one is McDavid chipping a puck over you. And I think there's very few people in the NHL I trust to miss a net less than McDavid. I mean, he always buries those. That's pretty much academic from where he was on the power play. Can't really blame him on that. So that's two sort of, you know. But Talbot was busy and Talbot was good. And Talbot, if you are, you know, someone on the coaching staff and thinking, might go with Cam Talbot on Saturday, your mind probably isn't changed. And similarly, if you were going in and if you were someone who went, I don't know, but David Riddick's real good. You know, he only faced 9 shots. He made 7 saves. Some of them, he didn't really have to do a heck of a lot because the Flames were really pressing for pretty much the entire time he was in, outside of like 30 seconds. And unfortunately, the 30 seconds involved him biffing a weird bounce. It is 30 degrees and, you know, sweltering in Edmonton. Pucks tend to have weird bounces when the ice is crappy, and Nugent Hopkins just hucked the puck into the offensive zone, and it died a death right in front of Rittich. He was completely caught unaware, as was his defenseman, and, you know, rebound goes right to Patrick Russell. He does what he needs to do with it. I think Patrick Russell technically hasn't scored a goal this year. He had 1 disallowed according to Oilers Nation, and this one he scored one that counts but also doesn't count. So poor Patrick Russell. And then, you know, turnover 30 seconds later in their own end, and the best hockey player in the world is left one-on-one with David Rittich 30 seconds after he let in kind of a beach ball and go through his legs, and they're down 4-1. So I don't know. It's the Flames, you know, they are who we thought they were. They were very flamesy early with a really slow, skittish, clunky start. By the time they got their legs about them, it was 18 minutes into the game, and they were down 2-0. And then they started to take over. And then Koskinen was real good. And when Koskinen wasn't real good and Smith wasn't real good, they missed the net and, you know, had a lot of shots that sort of went errant. And, you know, but I don't want to pick on guys, but let's be blunt here. When the story of the game is, man, 3rd/4th line center Sam Bennett sure looked good, that makes me wonder where was everybody else. And, you know, if you're someone who's nervous about the Flames having another Colorado-ish performance, I don't think that game did anything to really assuage your fears. And if you're thinking, you know, they got the crappy one out of the way, you know, they were, you know, they'll be better next time. You know, they probably could too. So it was a game that was 60 minutes that probably didn't solve any problems for anyone involved. It might have cemented a few things the Flames wanted to do anyway, but, you know, it was a game. No one was hurt. Everyone seemed to have a good time. People cursed at James Neal. It was a game.
Oh, yes. I would argue one of the turning points and one of the highlights was almost seeing Rasmus Andersson bop a James Neal in the nose. I think there were probably several Flames fans that were hoping that Rasmus Andersson would have bopped James Neal right in the nose.
Yep. I was hoping for it.
Hey, there's always the conference final.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. They could meet, and that could still happen. Okay, so the goal. Let's start with goaltending. And then we'll go out. Who's your based on this? Who is your game 1 starter? And I feel I'm going to start with a bit of a hot take. I think that this was almost decided by default, and I'm not confident with my answer, but I wanted to hear what you have to say.
I'll go first. I go Talbot. I mean, if it was a 7-game series, like if this is a normal year and you had, a game or two to let Rittich find his legs, like I think my big thing with the Flames goaltending is I think Talbot is a very consistent goaltender. His highs aren't that high. His lows aren't that low. He's 33. He's played a ton. You know what you're going to get. And, he occasionally has clunkers, but they're few and far between. And he won't steal games, but he won't give games away. He's a perfect 1B because he's a grilled cheese sandwich. He's rarely transcendent, but he's always good. He's hard to screw up. And, you're not going to get a lot of vitamins out of him, but you're never going to, it's not going to be terrible. Whereas Rittich is like, you're making a bit more of a complicated meal, and sometimes he's transcendent, and you're going, like, look at look at his year this year. I mean, first half of the season, he was an all-star, and rightfully so. First half of the last 2 seasons, there have been people in the analytics community and in the mainstream media going, where did this David Rittich come from? Maybe if he keeps this up, he can get Vezina votes. And then he doesn't because his second half is very un-Vezina. So with Rittich, if you have a couple games to help him sort of find his legs and sort of figure out what Rittich you're going to get, I think he's a better goaltender when he's on than Cam Talbot, but he's a worse goaltender when he's not on than Cam Talbot. And, the wildness in his game, the variations, the Mike Smithness of his puck handling sometimes are enough to give a lot of people pause. And I think in a best of 5, when you can't afford to give away a game to Winnipeg because your goaltending wasn't up to snuff, I think you go with the safe option and you go with Cam Talbot. And then, whenever happens, and they come back in November for next season's training camp, well, Rittich's under contract and you can figure out what you want to do with him next year. But, when the clock is ticking on your core and goaltending is something that keeps you up at night, you might as well just go with a safe option.
Heidi?
Kind of just thinking about it, like seeing yesterday's game and just kind of thinking about it today and seeing hearing a couple conversations around it. I think they're going to go with Talbot as well. Kind of just what Ryan said about like he's a little bit more, I think, reliable. I was listening to an interview with Louis DeBrusque today, and he had mentioned a point too about like, as much as like coaches and stuff will come out and say like, oh yeah, no, we're playing both guys and shouldn't have any stock into who you played first and who you played second. Like there may be a little bit of motivation behind why they put Talbot out first last night. So I think that's the way that it's gonna go. I don't think that Rittich's performance changed that. So I expect now to see Talbot in on Saturday.
Ryan, why is David Rittich struggling in the second half? Like, what are you finding to be the difference?
If I could boil down just to one thing, that I'd probably have Jordan Siglet, knocking on my door, going, "What's going on? Why did you tell us?" Honestly, I think it's a combination of things. One, I think they play him too much. He's a guy that before he came to North America, the most games he had played in any given season is about like 30 something. Let me check capfriendly.com. Beautiful website run by lovely people. David Rittich, according to the stats,
all websites should be run by lovely people, by the way.
I agree. Okay, let's say other than the 15-16 season, his last year in the Czech Republic, he played 48 games. Granted, that's 48 games with very little travel, because in the Czech league you sleep primarily in your own bed. It's like the Swiss league. It's a small country without a lot of travel. 16-17, 32 games. 17-18, he played 33 games plus the World Championships. Last year, first year as a real starter, 45 games, which is a fairly big jump, plus he plays in the Western Conference, which has atrocious travel. And then this year, 48 games. So if you subscribe to the wear and tear concept of he's a guy who, hasn't really been leaned on this heavily, mentally, physically, psychologically, as a grown ass adult. He played in his home country, pretty close to his hometown. He had a comfort zone, I think, and then he came over here, and there's a lot of unknowns, and then he did fantastic for the first. He's only played 4 years in North America, and he's done fantastic relative to, I would say, 80% of the goaltenders from any country who come over to North America. He's done superb. He's playing. He played 40. He's played over 100 games in the NHL, for goodness sake. But at the same time, I think when so many of your good games are in the first half of the season and then things start falling apart, I just look to wear and tear and overuse. And if you look at the player's history, I mean, New Year's Eve last year, he happened to have played a heck of a lot of hockey before, and then he tweaks his knee and his numbers fall off a cliff, and he tries to rehab it and tries to finish out the season. And then Mike Smith takes over the net and does give it back. And then this season, it's a very similar story where it's unclear when his elbow injury started or which elbow it was, and we're not going to be told any of those details probably until garbage bag day. But he admitted in interviews that he did hurt it. His elbow was bothering him. He was getting cortisone shots from his elbow in the second half of the year, and lo and behold, he went from being Vezina caliber goalie to being a guy who, had better. He definitely had better numbers. Like we did a breakdown of this at Flames Nation, just for looking at rolling charts of different kinds of scoring chances, and he was a less effective goaltender across the board in the second half. I think my theory is he had the injury sometime in late January, early February, because that's when his rolling numbers took a fairly big dip. And the same pattern emerged when we looked at his 18-19 save percentages from after New Year's Eve. When we knew he got injured because he told everyone in April after garbage bag day. Shockingly, things crashed and burned for him. So the short answer is I think they need to balance him out a bit. If you're going from playing 33 games against American League and Czech Extra League opposition versus playing 45, 50 games against NHL opposition, I think between the travel and the quality opposition and a lot of other factors, I think it's too much for him. I think he sort of got thrown in the deep end a bit. So maybe the simple solution is, next season when, with whichever other goaltenders in the organization, maybe mix them into the mix a little bit earlier, because you want to be able to leave your best Mike's or your best David Rittich performances for March and April, or July or August, wherever the hell the schedule's gonna be like next year, rather than having him look like a superhuman in October, November, because let's just be blunt here, doesn't matter that he's played in the All-Star game. In the grand scheme of things, not really. I mean, it's good for him. He got a trip to St. Louis. Like, if you like St. Louis, hooray! You got a trip to St. Louis, and he gets a jersey, and I think he gets like a little bit of bonus money from the league, and all that stuff. But the fact that he played so much and so well, and possibly for the second year in a row won't get any playoff games in, that's kind of disappointing. I think it says that they need to manage him better in terms of an asset and in terms of a player.
Hey, I mean, he got to hang out with Chucky in St. Louis.
You can do that at home.
Yeah, but it's not St. Louis. I mean, I
think he had fun there. He looked like he was having fun there, being there with his best buddy.
He can get Kachuk hugs at home.
That's
and
true.
Spread them out throughout the year so that he's not all hugged out by Christmas.
Fair. That's fair. Before if I has a question, the other, this theory is coming up, and I want to hear what you think of this. If the goaltending bombs in any way, shape, or form in this qualifier or in this playoff, however you look at it, do the Flames go after a big fish in the offseason? Do they go after the Holtby Markstrom type?
I'm going to say this knowing that this is something they do every year. I mean, this summer at the draft, we heard whispers about Flames making big swings because it's Brad Treliving, and he always makes big swings. And this year, I think you guys remember like the day before. Actually, yeah, it was literally the day before the draft because it wasn't clear what the salary cap would be, and there was a bunch of us hanging out at the GM's meetings going, when are we going to find out what the cap is? This is really weird that we don't know what the cap is. And then Bill Daly and everyone came out and said, yeah, the cap's 81.5 instead of 80, whatever. See you, bye. And then they sort of ran off, and the GMs are like, oh, we have like $2 million less than we thought we would. And based on the $2 million less than we thought they'd have, everyone thought, okay, Treliving can't do a big move this summer or even this season because between Valamacki getting hurt and counting against the cap and Kachuk's raise and all the other things, there's no way in hell they're going to be looking at stuff, right? Well, outside of Nazem Kadri not wanting to leave Toronto and then leaving Toronto anyway, and he nixed the trade, the Flames trade with Toronto was done. There was going to be Connor Brown and Nazem Kadri here for Mark Jankowski and TJ Brody. Now, granted, that was before they found out Valamacki was hurt, so it's kind of good luck they didn't do that because then they would have been kind of screwed defensively. I also have no idea how they would have made the cap hit work because they would have had to send Brown somewhere else, and then they would have had to clear out money from somewhere else, and I think they probably would have had 2 or 3 more bodies playing a league minimum. But that's my roundabout way of saying every year I say, Brad, there's no way I think you can make big moves work under the flat salary cap. There's no way. And every year I feel foolish because he figures things out. So, case in point, mid-season, the Flames made a very credible offer for Taylor Hall that New Jersey really, really liked. It was very much a here and now, making Jersey a decent team in the immediate now versus, they ended up going with Arizona's deal, which was a bunch of futures. If Jersey just wants to punt for a couple of years and be kind of bad, I don't know. I'm not signing the checks there, so it's not my problem. But it speaks to the Flames could have had Taylor Hall in midseason. I have no idea how they would have made the cap work. It would have probably caused Brad to go gray and maybe lose his hair or do something crazy. But this is a guy who mid-season playoffs, whenever, isn't really that nervous about doing big, bold, brash things to improve this hockey club. So which brings around to if the goaltending absolutely biffs it in the next 3 to 5 games, or let's be honest, even if they get past Winnipeg and goaltending isn't what they need it to be for them to have a parade, and this is a group legitimately based on last year, they think they could have had a parade. That's why they're this pissed off. They thought they were good enough to win the Stanley Cup. Regular season wise, they probably were good enough to win a Stanley Cup. They just peaked at the complete wrong time. But this is a group that thinks they win a Stanley Cup. They have everyone. The most important players in the organization are signed for a long time and or are super young, and pretty much everybody across the board who is signed long term is signed to below market value relative to their counterparts in other teams. So they have a cost-effective team full of young guys who want to win, full of they have a system full of depth, which they think is good enough. And if they think Jacob Markstrom is the difference between them having a parade in a year or not, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to get him. Whether or not they land him depends on if he wants to come here. I mean, Nazem Kadri would have been a Calgary Flame had he, I guess, thought about. I don't know. I think he just got bad advice because if the Leafs trade you and you think if I just say no, they won't trade me anywhere, right? That's bad. He definitely got bad advice. But they were a piece of paper being signed by Nazem Kadri, waiving his no trade away from Nazem Kadri being a Calgary Flame. Regardless of how you feel about Milan Lucic as an asset, he's still a pretty useful player. He's a name. He's the guy with the most experience in the room. He sat in the front row in the photo, which says a lot about how he's viewed internally in terms of his leadership and his spot in the room and spot in the social hierarchy of the team. James Neal for Milan Lucic in the grand scheme of things was a pretty significant trade, and it was predicated on Brad Treliving calling Milan Lucic at home and saying, hey, here's where we think you'd fit in. Do you want to come here? Because he had a no move that he had to wait. Again, if they think that Taylor Hall will be the difference between the Flames having a parade and not, and then they think, I don't know, league average goaltending, they just need to figure out league average goaltending. personally, like, for me, I've never been a big fan of spending a lot of money on goaltending because, it's one of the things where, let's just be hypothetical here. Flames have, 6 guys making $5.5-6 million a year. One of them gets hurt, you got 5 others, right? You can move guys around, you can do a lot of things, but if you put $7 million, $8 million, like the day that Sergei Bobrovsky signed a $10 million contract in Florida, my initial reaction was, holy crap! You could pay for all of Calgary's goaltending and then like 3 other guys for the amount of money they're giving Sergei Bobrovsky, and then lo and behold, he was hurt for half the year. So I think from an asset management perspective and an analytics perspective, it's terrifying to put a lot of money into a goaltender. It scares the hell out of me. I can kind of see why they would do it, though, if they think that someone like Markstrom or Robin Lehner or someone like that, someone who costs them a pretty penny and be somebody who makes a lot more money than David Rittich, if they think that's what they need to do, they're probably going to try to do it, and then they will probably try to con somebody into taking one of their weird contracts off the books, or I don't know. They have a lot of draft picks. They have a lot of contracts that would be fairly, I don't think they have a lot of bad money. I mean, you're not going to convince anyone to take Lucic, but pretty much everybody else in the organization who makes significant money, somebody would take.
Fair. Heidi, I may want to ask about that Lucic Neal trade in retrospect again a little bit later. But Heidi, did you have a question?
I just thought it was interesting that you said Markstrom. Just because we're a Flames and Canucks podcast, that would just cause so much.
That would be great content.
Yeah, it would be great content for us. It would be great content in my household. So
he's so good. He's so good.
Yeah, and he's friends with Elias Lindholm. They were hanging out together in Sweden. So
I always mix up who's actually Swedish. Who is Markstrom Swedish? He's Swedish.
Yeah.
Isn't he?
Yeah, they're friends. So I mean, Elias Lindholm could just phone him and just
flat out, I was at the draft. I was at the draft in Vancouver, and Pat Steinberg had Lucas Folk on, who is the Flames fifth round pick. Anyway, the Swedish guy. Sidebar: we couldn't figure out how to say his name. We were trying to figure out if we had to curse to say his name properly, and then he was, Lucas was very helpful and made sure we got his name right. He's a very nice young man. But in speaking with the nice young man at the development camp afterwards, about 2 weeks later, Flames got a lot of Swedes, eh? Just sort of apropos of nothing. He's like, yeah, it's really cool. Backlund called me 10 minutes after I got drafted. It was so awesome. So, when Eric Gustafsson got here, he knew some guys from the World Championships, but, his first week here, all the Swedes took him out for dinner, found out a place to live, figured out ways to sort of he can keep in touch with the kids. They have a very mature group of Swedes. I think the team right now is carrying 5 or 6 Swedes. They all get along. They've been, Backlund's been mentoring, all the young Swedes for a couple of years. And if you're a Swedish player and or you want to win in a Canadian market, I think you can sell Calgary. I mean, the cap situation isn't amazing, but it's not as bad as other teams. I mean, they don't need to do anything dumb to fit under the cap next year. And if they can move some money out, they would have money for Markstrom or Hall or Lehner or whoever you think the Flames need to go out and get this summer or fall. I don't know. I'm going to say summer a lot here. Yeah. And you know what I mean.
When I hear this time of year, I'm like, this is not the time of year we play hockey, folks. But, it's kind of, I hear what you're saying. So I guess then let's look at defensively. Let's start with the loss of Travis Hamonic. How big is it? I'm not going to. No one here is going to criticize him for making the decision, but I guess how big is the loss of Travis Hamonic?
My big thing is just I think it'll expose a bit how lean the Flames are in terms of their depth. I mean, right now I'm sort of doing a thing comparing, Winnipeg's blue line to Calgary's blue line because, the general consensus is the Flames have a better blue line. And, when your best defenseman's a Norris Trophy winner and a hockey unicorn, the Flames probably do have better players on their blue line. I mean, their top pairing is real good. reliable. But I think, like, imagine if you have a third pairing that's Rasmus Andersson and Gustafsson, for example. I mean, Gustafsson is admittedly not a great defensive defenseman. He's a power play specialist. He's kind of a throwback because, like, it's the same reason, the Flames, when Dennis Weidman was on the team, they had Chris Russell with them sort of, covering his ass all the time, because Dennis Weidman, you knew what he was. He is not a two-way maven. He's a guy with a great shot from the point who could just blast things in and cause chaos with his point shot. And he got paid very well for being a specialist. And, this summer, I think Evolving Wild, with their costing model, I think they figure that, Gustafsson long-term would cost $5 or $6 million a year, because he is a very productive player and he's an absolute monster from the point. Hell, we saw in the Edmonton game where the only Flames goal was scored off a rebound created by a Gustafsson slapper from the point. And, they had chaos, and Lindholm was able to sort of jump on the rebound and take advantage. So, power play guy, beautiful, great, good to have, worth the third round pick they're giving up. But at the same time, 5-on-5, you might want to have a babysitter with them. And so they have Derek Forbort, which, as far as babysitters go, Forbort's fine. He is what he is. He's fine. He's adequate. No one's gonna go out of your way. He's never gonna be a gold rush for Forbort that we're not gonna be talking about on October, whatever the hell, when free agency opens up, the Forbort sweepstakes. But he's fine. He's reliable. He's sort of arguably a better Michael Stone. But would you rather have a better Michael Stone or Rasmus Andersson, who's 23 and can skate and can hit and can has some bite to his game and seems to get better every week? I probably want Rasmus Andersson on my third pairing, because if Rasmus Andersson's in your third pairing, it means you got four guys better than him. And right now, the Flames don't get four guys better than him. Hannafin's kind of fought it sometimes. He did not look great early on in the first period against Edmonton. He is prone to defensive guffaws. And right now, instead of having Travis Hamonic, who has seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hockey games, and he's reliable because he can sort of figure out weird scenarios and just sort of counter them before they emerge. And he has a decidedly good slap shot too. And he's good defensively, and he's good in transition. Like, there's a lot of things like with Hamonic's game, whereas Andersson hasn't developed it yet, and Andersson isn't quite as good for covering up for Hannafin as Hamonic was. So the Flames defense, I think it's fine. It's losing Hamonic took them from being very, very good and deep, and having you'd have to scratch Forbort for Gustafsson. You'd probably scratch Forbort. Let's be honest. If Hamonic's healthy, Forbort isn't in the lineup. So if your extra bodies are Michael Stone, Forbort, Yellison, who I love, Valamacki, and Kylington, like, if you got six guys like that who are just sort of hanging out, that's pretty good. I mean, Kylington can skate, and if you need to plug him in, he's fine. And Stone is very much a stay-at-home throwback, but he's fine if you use him well. Yellison and Valamacki, I'm kind of pissed that they didn't stream the scrimmages, because Valamacki and Yellison were a really, really good pairing in the scrimmages, because Yellison is just sort of the quiet Russian guy who just loves hitting dudes, and then he just passes it to his partner, who pinches and brings up the ice, and they end up getting a 4-on-2 rush going the other way, with Yellison being the guy who creates that thing happening. Hamonic does that sometimes. I think Hamonic's one of those guys that people underrate his offensive prowess sometimes, because he's got a reputation just for sort of being a meat and potatoes guy. But meat and potatoes are delicious, and Hamonic is a guy they're really going to miss, because he's so reliable and touches so many parts of the game. I mean, he doesn't work on the power play at all, but he's a very good glass and out defensive defenseman at his best. And not having him makes everyone play a little bit more and a little bit out of their comfort zone. That said, I think when we all reconvene in November and see what the after effects of Hamonic's opting out was, I think one of them would be, I think Rasmus Andersson is going to be a much better defenseman than he is right now in November, because of all the stressful situations he's going to be forced to play in now. Is it the easiest way to learn and the easiest way to improve? Well, no, and I think his blood pressure would have been a lot lower, and his life a lot easier had Hamonic been around for the next month, 2 months, whatever. But he's going to do a lot of on-the-job training. He's had to do a lot of on-the-job training, but it just sucks because Hamonic's one of those guys that he's made for the playoffs. He's just an absolute pain in the ass to play against, and he's a guy that loves to hit and loves to scrap. And in a 5-game series against Winnipeg, I could just see him leaning the hell on some of their forwards. And now who's going to do it? Probably Anderson. Like, it's always going to be Anderson.
I'd like to see more. I love his grease. I just would like to see it more. We were talking about that last night. Just like to see him do that a little bit more.
Do you see any of these defensemen kind of more on the bottom? So say like Yeltsin or Kylington. Do you see any of them maybe coming up and taking a spot in the third pairing during any of the games against Winnipeg?
If it was up to me and they didn't have to worry about expansion, I would just say screw it, put Valamacki in, because he was that good in the scrimmages that I saw. And I'm old school. Like, it was his spot. He was gonna be the third pairing left side guy, and I think losing your spot because you get hurt and then not being able to play in the playoffs, like, it's gonna suck for him. I mean, he's smart. He gets it. Being told we can't play you because you haven't played competitive hockey in crap. His last game was April of 2019, so he would not have played competitive hockey in like the better part of a year and a half. So the brain can say, yeah, don't put him in because that sounds like a terrible idea. He hasn't played in a year and a half, and then you might have to lose somebody better in expansion. But the heart goes, oh, I feel so bad for him because he's put in the work and he looks like he's ready. I'd be nervous about putting Kylington in on the left side because he has a bit of roughness to his defensive game. He looked like he was fighting a bit in one of the scrimmages. Granted, it was the first scrimmage, and everybody kind of sucked in the first scrimmage because it's the first scrimmage, and that's what it's there for everybody sucking. But I don't know. He's. I think I could see them putting in Stone. I don't know if that'd be the best idea, but Stone is a guy who's played 400 games, and you're not going to get surprised by him. But he's also a guy that if you want to use him, you probably put in Stone at home when you have last change and can do what you can to make his life easy. But I don't know. I think that's the big issue with me with the Flames' depth because as soon as you go beyond Forward and Gustafsson and you go, okay, who else is there? There's Stone, who is 30. I think he's 30. Yeah, he's almost 30, or he's 30, and he is what he is. He's sort of a limited use specialist guy that you want to protect. Valamacki hasn't played in a year and a half, but he's very good, probably. But he also hasn't played in a year and a half, so you're not really sure what he is. Yellison has played 4 NHL games, and granted, he looked good in those 4 NHL games. But the 4 NHL games were against Chicago, LA, actually Chicago, I think Anaheim twice. So 3 out of 4 games he played, he was playing against the bottom feeders of the league, and that's how you ease a young player in. But I don't know if you really learn much about him beyond he can play against bad teams. And then who the else is there? Kylington, that's the other guy they have, and I'm a big Oliver Kylington guy. I think he might be the best skater in the organization in terms of just pure mobility outside of maybe TJ Brody. And Brody's getting on here, so I think that Valamacki, or probably Valamacki and Kylington will take that title away from Brody at some point. But Kylington, let's be honest, like Kylington seems kind of Brody-ish in terms of the early Brody. And I remember Brody's first year pro when he was 20, where he came in, he made the team out of camp, and then he looked awful because he did not really know how to play well in his own zone. Kylington came over as an 18-year-old and said, I want to learn to play NHL hockey. So they stuck him in the bus leagues and said, learn how to play in your own zone. And credit to him, he went in and he went from being a kind of cringy AHL defensive zone defenseman to being a really good defenseman. I mean, he was down there for like 2 weeks this season, and the feedback from pro scouts I know was, what the hell is he doing down there? He's too good for that league. So Kylington is in a weird position where he's fantastic in the minor leagues and should be an everyday NHLer, but the role he will have is completely unclear. And also, if you look at where the Flames are on the left side, Mackey's there, Valamacki's there. So it's unclear where he fits in. And because he doesn't have a clear role, like, you can put Forward in because he can kill penalties and be your D-zone specialist and, eat up 10, 12 minutes a night so that your guys who can score goals can get rested and get their win back and go out and score goals. Kylington, I think he's more wired to be a guy that wants to score goals. And, scoring goals is fun, but when we're put into a role where you have to sort of go against the style of play you love, it's tough. And I can see, saying that it must be torture for Valamacki. I mean, this is 2 years in a row where the Flames went out at the trade deadline and said, with Kylington on the roster, and said, thank you for showing up. You've done great. It is now the trade deadline and we found somebody else. And then he had to sit and watch the playoffs last year. Like, he didn't play in the playoffs last year. He sat in the press box and watched. And this year he's starting off as the 7th or 8th best defenseman, and he'll probably sit and watch until somebody gets hurt. And, if I'm that kid, I go, what else? What does he need to do? It sucks for him. He seems like the type of guy that, maybe he goes to Seattle, maybe they trade him, maybe, he seems like it's just a bad fit for him in the organization, just in terms of, his timing was just wrong. I mean, he's so good. And then he's a 15 pick. And then 3 years after they draft him, they get Noah Hannafin. And if you're stuck behind a Norris winner and Noah Hannafin, there's one spot for you, and there's like 9 guys in the organization fighting for the left side spot. And unless he can convince them he can play on the right side, which he did in Sweden, unless he can convince them he can play on the right side and be as good as Brody is playing on his off wing, I don't know what else there is for him to do here. So the long answer is, who would I play if logistics, timing, budget, and there is no rules to anything? I put Valamacki in because I love Valamacki, and he seems like he's ready to go. But I'm also very glad it's not my decision, because I don't know, he's going to be so important to this group. Like, he'll in like 2 years, I think Valamacki will be playing Giordano's minutes, but that also involves him staying healthy and not being thrown to the wolves when he hasn't played in 18 months. So. The heart, like I said, the heart wants what it wants, but the brain goes, maybe park him for a little bit and get him some popcorn.
That's why I didn't mention his name when I started naming out names, because I was like, we really shouldn't be playing him.
And honestly, if there was no rules, they'd probably be Connor Mackey. Like, Connor Mackey was, when we did a media avail with Jeff Ward after the last day of training camp, when they told us what the roster was and who was going to cut, and we're like, how is Mackey? And no word of a lie, I actually transcribed it and counted. He said 14 separate nice things about Connor Mackey's game. It began with very, very impressed and ended after 14 superlatives with, we think we have a very, very special player. Or very, very good player. So they're very, very impressed, and he's very, very good, and 14 superlatives, and they can't use him. And
you remind me why they can't use him?
Fun with the CBA. The NHL's broad rule is, if you're not on the team's reserve list as of the trade deadline, as of 3 p.m. on whatever Monday it is, and at the end of February, you can't play. So it's essentially just saving some teams from going out to Europe when the European seasons end in April, or when the college seasons end, and just going out and buying up all the free agents and loading up. So it's essentially the team you have, draft picks, whatever, everyone who your team owns the rights to as of the trade deadline, you can play in the playoffs. But unfortunately, Connor Mackey, he was a free agent signing, and they wish he could play for them, because, oh goodness, I haven't seen them this excited about a defenseman since they drafted Valamacki. So good for them, but right now it's probably torture. If for whatever reason they lose in the first round or second round or whatever, or heaven forbid they go to the Stanley Cup final and lose because they ran out of defensemen, because they couldn't use Connor Mackey, like, Brad Treliving might cry, because that would just be the most mean thing for the universe to do. And now that I've said it out loud, just watch what's going to happen. Game 7, they will lose because we don't have enough defensemen.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
I put it out in the universe, and now it's got to happen, right?
Before we go to forwards, Devin made this suggestion. I just want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. He suggests Forbort go up and play with Anderson, and you go with Gustafsson and Hanifin. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't know. I'm the type of person that needs to see it first.
I will say this. TJ Brody has played like hundreds of games in the NHL. He's played more games in the NHL of any Flames defenseman not named Mark Giordano this season. And there are stylistic reasons why they will not use Brody and Hanifin 5-on-5 together. They're using them together on the penalty kill right now because, let's be honest, there's really nobody else. Like, you're not going to use Gustafsson. You probably don't have Anderson in there because Anderson plays a lot already. So, you know, it is what it is. But stylistically, Forbort playing on his off wing with Hanifin seems...
No, it would be Gustafsson on his offside with Hanifin. And then Forbort would be on the left with Anderson.
I don't mind Forbort and Anderson. Forbort and Anderson would be fun. Like, you know, Forbort's a good stay-at-home guy, and then Anderson could jump up a bit more. But just stylistically, like on the Hanifin-Anderson pairing, Anderson's the defensive guy. He's the hang back a bit guy, and then it gives Anderson or Hanifin a bit more liberty to run around. Who's the defensive guy if you're playing Gustafsson with Hanifin? It's like, I don't know. It's like, do you want to have a cereal that's all marshmallows? You need to have the little corn pieces there to sort of balance out the mouthfeel. All marshmallows would be too much marshmallows, and that would be two offensive-minded guys in a pairing is too many marshmallows.
See, now what I like is that you've compared a lot of things to food, so it's interesting to kind of how you grilled cheese, marshmallows. So now I'm picturing that. So thanks a lot. Yeah.
It's because they don't feed us during games anymore. I get snacky.
I can imagine. Yeah. So to jump to the forwards, let's go fourth line up. Was that last night the almost end of Mark Jankowski?
Yeah, I mean, let's play devil's advocate then. What's Mark Jankowski's calling card? Because, I remember, he 2 years ago. 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago when this contract started, he scored 4 goals in game 82 against a Vegas team that is playoff bound while playing for a Flames team that was not. I mean, so Vegas was resting all their good players. Marc-Andre Fleury was, I think, sipping a latte somewhere. And Vegas got lit up like a slot machine, and they did not care because they were going to the playoffs. So the only person on either team that really was emotionally invested in that game was Mark Jankowski, because he went and he got his goals total up to 17. And, when you go to a salary arb case or you're talking to their agent about comparables and you're sitting down with Brad Treliving or Chris Snow negotiating a contract, you're not going to go, yeah, it's all in the same game. I mean, the goals are goals. Like, your comparables, and that 4-goal game got him into a nice little tax bracket. Last year, he wasn't, he didn't have any 4-goal games, but he was exceptional in the penalty kill. Granted, I think we're discovering a lot of the exceptionalities of the penalty kill were systems. Like, Ryan Huska had them playing a really nice aggressive system that allowed them to disrupt. And this season, I think opposition power plays are a little bit more conservative with their puck handling against Calgary because they don't want to cough it up and give up a shorty. But last year Jankowski was exceptional shorthanded and kind of ordinary in every other situation, but you kept him around because he was a good shorthanded player. And this year he's sort of, the percentages aren't going his way shorthanded, and they're going against him 5-on-5. And he's a tall fourth line guy who's making $1.75 million a year when his line mates are combined making less than he is. And you could make a very strong argument that Zach Ronaldo and Toby Reeder, for what they brought to the table, have been more effective and more cost-effective for the Flames. So if you're the Flames and your situation is you have playoff Sam Bennett, who you need to do something with because this is the time of year where he's pretty useful, you probably want to get more out of him. You have Derek Ryan, who history has shown you could play him with, the guy filling the water bottles in the benches, and he'll do his level best to be the best he can at it. Like he's one of those guys that is just constant pro. And if you're picking two guys out of Jankowski, Bennett, and Derek Ryan to play any given night, and you have to sit one of them, you're probably sitting Jankowski because, what's he the best at? Derek Ryan's a great two-way center. He's fantastic face-offs. He's one of the better face-off guys in the league the last 2-3 years. That's one of the reasons why so many teams wanted him. It's one of the reasons why, for a guy that doesn't really, move the needle offensively a ton, he's making over $3 million a year. If you're Sam Bennett was, he's a guy who can play pretty much anywhere in your lineup. Is he consistent? Not really. Is he prone to taking mind-boggling penalties sometimes? Well, yeah, we saw that last night. He took I think he was the Flames' outright leader in both offensive zone penalties and 5-on-5 penalties of any kind this year. He put their penalty kill on the ice probably more than anyone else on the team. But that said, he's also one of those guys that draws penalties and is scrappy and sort of gets in the middle of everything. And he's in a way he's kind of a poor man's Matthew Tkachuk because is he as good an agitator as him? Well, no. Is he as good a two-way player as him? Well, no. Is he as good at burying his chances? Definitely not. I think that's why he's the poor man's Matthew Tkachuk. But he's a little bit worse than Tkachuk at just about everything. But he can play up the middle and he can take faceoffs, and he's pretty decent at it. So if you had the choice of taking, for when you're in your bottom six for a playoff series, you want to have the tall kid who's, I don't know, he's tall, he's big, he doesn't play particularly mean, he's just sort of the tall guy who's there. He's, Jankowski's an adequate NHL player. He's above replacement level, but not that far above. He doesn't really have a calling card. He doesn't have anything that you say, hypothetically, if the three of us are sitting here with Jeff Ward, he's filling out his lineup card. We could probably go with him and go down the entire lineup card and say, he went to us and said, I'm taking Gaudreau out of the lineup. Obviously, we go, yeah, why would you do that? You can do this, that, and the other thing. He's definitely not going to take Gaudreau out of the lineup. But if you did that kind of exercise, you went down the lineup card and he's going to tell us, I'm taking so-and-so out of the lineup, and we have to come up with a justification to keep somebody in. The toughest justification for that is Mark Jankowski. Toby Reeder is super fast and kills penalties, and Toby Reeder, he can play either wing. He can if he only plays 8 minutes a night or 12 minutes a night or whatever, he's still effective. He's a hell of a forechecker. He doesn't bury anything usually, but he's fast and he's a pain in the ass to play against. Zach Rinaldo, he'll hit, he'll fight, he'll scrap around. If you're looking for guys who bring a physical edge to your game, but you don't want the players who are more talented than him, like say, you probably don't want Bennett being in the penalty box for 2 minutes at a time, or Tkachuk, or any of your defensemen. But if you feel like you need to have an 8 to 10 minute night guy who will be a buzzsaw and sort of crash guys around and sort of put a stinky glove in someone's face and basically be a pain in the ass on purpose, Zach Rinaldo's your guy, and he's getting paid league minimum. So in terms of guys who don't mind doing that, Rinaldo's probably your specialist in terms of that speciality, and and he doesn't mind sitting on the bench for 80% of the game. But when you get to Jankowski, what's the thing that keeps him in the lineup? What's the thing that makes all of us go, you can't take him out of the lineup? He's too good at. He's pretty good at a lot of things, but he's not. He doesn't have a thing. He doesn't have a speciality. He doesn't have the one thing that keeps him in the lineup. And previously that was his penalty killing, but he's been fine at the penalty kill this year, but not fine enough that we're not having the conversation, a couple days before the playoffs start about benching him, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see this, I think Bennett should be the fourth line. Should be on the fourth line. Now, I'll make an argument for Quine, and I might make an argument in this series for a guy like Buddy Robinson because I think his size would be something. So I'm open to an idea of a Bennett, Ronaldo, Reeder, Quine conversation. But I'm sorry, I don't see Mark Jankowski what he fully brings to the lineup anymore. And I think last night was proof pudding when he basically was on the bench for the entire second half of the game.
Yeah, he got no shifts in the third period. And while we're on that train, I mean, if you're thinking maybe not Jankowski, why not Zarnik? I mean,
yeah,
Zarnik's righty. He can play center. He can play the wing. He's fast. He's small, but he's not teeny. I mean, if you're looking to get some energy in your lap, maybe you can go with him. Alan Quine, like you said, he's played a ton in the playoffs. He's been, historically a very good player in the playoffs, and he played for the Flames this year. And Alan Quine is the type of guy where actually I'm pretty sure with Quine, he played 3 games and 3 nights in 3 cities because he played a back-to-back in Stockton. Somebody in Calgary got hurt. So as he came off the ice in, I think, the second game in Stockton, they said, Quiner, grab your bag, you're going to the show. And he played 3 games and 3 nights in 3 different cities. He didn't play a ton the third game, but he's the type of guy where there's, his game is uncomplicated enough and he's enough of a veteran that you can literally just throw him out there coming from the airport and he'll be fine. And, I don't know if there's a lot of guys that, in the system who can do that. And that's, I think that speaks, that's why they went out and got him, because they're like, why not throw him in? Like Byron Frais is another guy where, he's played in the NHL a fair bit and, he doesn't get a lot of press for how good he is, but, he was the captain in Stockton. He captained a very good Stockton Heat team. And he was one of those guys that was responsible for mentoring all these young guys that are coming up. And independent of being a good mentor, he's, a pretty decent two-way center, and he's a right shot. So, if you want to get different looks, they have a lot of different things. And Jankowski's a lanky left-hand center who's, he's fine. But, he's a tough guy to really go to bat for because there's not a lot that's exciting about his game. Whereas, Quine has the 3-and-3 thing, and Zarnik has, Zarnik was very good in the top 6 until he had the high ankle sprain, and then he just, they just never really had a window to bring him back up because they never really had a spot for him. And, he was the type of guy where I think they liked him enough that they didn't just want to throw him in, like, somebody's hurt, so come on up. But only for 3 days. I think they were waiting for a spot to open up more permanently for him or give him a decent look, and then it just never happened. So Buddy Robinson's another guy. Like, Buddy Robinson's sort of in the Quine boat where, Buddy Robinson, the most interesting thing about Buddy Robinson is he's big, but he's a big guy. He's a right shot. And, if he needs somebody who can sort of truck around his own zone and lean on guys and blast guys to the boards, he'll pay 10 minutes a night and he'll crash and bang for you and he'll be fine. Jankowski, I mean, he doesn't play mean. He doesn't have a lot of flair in his game. He doesn't have a lot of flash. He's a decent left shot two-way center, but there's not a ton that really makes people excited about him. And, to get in the lineup and to stay in the lineup in the NHL, you have to have one of the coaches, if not more of them, in your, when they're making up the lineup card, going, you can't take Jankowski out. And I don't know what the ammo they would be bringing to those kind of things. I mean, he's tall. I mean, he's really tall, and he's 27, 26, 27. I forget how old he is. He's almost 27. But he's done a good job carving out a spot for himself in the NHL, but the spot he's carved out for himself is very precarious right now.
Heidi?
So I was just going to say, so who knows whether we'll actually see him for game 1 on Saturday or not, because as you said, there is options, but I mean, those options have not been up in Calgary most of the year too, so who knows? I know for me, I'm expecting maybe at least 1 or 2 surprises on Saturday, whether it's with the goaltender or maybe somewhere on that fourth line.
I'm not really, to be honest, I don't know how many surprises I'm expecting because, let's be honest, the coach is coaching for his job right now. I mean, I'm like 90% sure Jeff Orr's coming back next year, if only because, at this point, we're going to have 6 weeks of off season between, when the Stanley Cup final ends and when people show up for training camp, barring any kind of some kind of mysterious world event that pushes the whole schedule back by however long, like last time we had a season. But if you're if you're Treliving and you're doing yet another coaching change, and this would be Jeff Ward is their third coach in 3 years. Third coach in 4 years. So if you're gonna do 4 and 5, you're not gonna do the same kind of thing last time where you're like, gonna hire Bill Peters because I liked him in the World Championships. Yeah, probably not doing that again. You probably won't be able to bring in your second or third choice from the Guldston sweepstakes because you're not going to have that many. He lucked out where he had like a guy he really liked on his coaching staff to begin with. So you're not going to luck out again. So if he's doing another coaching search, it's going to be extensive. And if he does an extensive coaching search, you're probably not going to get permission to talk to guys on NHL staffs until majority of the playoffs are over. And that's what playoffs is August. It's August 1st, the first round. August 1st to 10th is the qualifiers. You're probably taken to the end of September. So you're probably looking to get the good coaches that you'd actually want to steal from good teams. Like, I don't know, mid to late September. So, you're not going to, he might have, 8 weeks before training camp opens to do an actual intensive search. Like, I like Jeff Ward. I think he's a good coach. And I think he's a good fit for the style of play they want. And I think, independent of that, he's probably not a terribly expensive coach based on his lack of NHL head coaching experience. So all of these things are reasons why I think the Flames will probably keep Jeff Ward. But like, if you're Ward, you probably don't know you have a contract for next year yet. It's probably something where everyone involved has publicly said, we'll deal with in the off season, and they probably will deal with in the off season. So if you're Jeff and you don't know you have a gig next year, you're probably going to be a little bit conservative in your lineup. I mean, you're probably going to go with the safe option and goal. Like if you're being, I think it'd be ballsy to go with Rittich, just with how his second half was. But I think they're going to go with Talbot because I think Talbot's the easiest guy to choose. And if I'm going to a job interview, if I'm going to, go to Treliving or Murray Edwards or whoever the hell is in the room, John Bean, whoever's going to be, take me to task over my decisions. And when I'm asking for a full-time gig in the NHL, I want to be able, it's the, you guys probably both seen Moneyball, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a scene in Moneyball where, Art Howe, played by the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman, he has Billy Bean coming in his locker room, and he keeps saying, "You're going to play so and so this position," and he's trying to impose things on him. And Art Howe at the time was on an expiring contract, and he's just sort of shrugged. And he said, "I'm going to coach this team in a way I can defend in job interviews in the fall." And if you're Jeff Ward, until you have a contract locked in, I think psychologically, regardless of how bold he wants to be, I think he might be a bit restrained in his roster decision making. So, that means instead of going with doing something off the wall in terms of like screw it, what, damn the torpedoes, or putting Valamacki in. You're like maybe let's go with the veteran defensive pairings for now, just to sort of let's start off like that and see how it goes for your forwards. Sam Bennett has played a ton of hockey this year. He's played a decent amount of hockey at center this year. So as much as we're like, Jankowski is sort of the everyday fourth line center, putting the guy who has been pretty good in the exhibition and pretty good in scrimmages and has played center, this year, putting him into the one of the bottom 6 center spots, isn't that remarkable? It's like, well, yeah, if you want to get a different look and you want to get playoff Sam Bennett some more playoff ice time, then yeah, playoff Sam Bennett, go nuts. So I honestly don't think we're going to see that many, at least in game 1 or game 2. I don't think we're going to see that many weird things. Like, as long as everybody's healthy and nobody's injured, I don't really think they're going to do much else but go with sort of a veteran lineup for the first couple games. But if they get down a game or two and they decide to get crazy, I mean, that's the time to get crazy. Like, the Flames were down, or the Flames brought in Jerome McGinley from junior. They got swept by Chicago, and they were down 2-rip and went, screw it, bring in the kid, why not? Yeah. And they brought in the kid, and he was fine. I mean, look at when the Flames used Valamacki last year. Valamacki coming off a high ankle sprain in a very lengthy term in the AHL, getting his wheels back. He was up as a depth defenseman, and they were down, I think, like 2-1. I think 2 or 3 games in the series, Bill Peters went, screw it, put in Valamacki. We need the energy. So at that point, if they feel like they need a kick in the ass, I can see them, I can see Jeff Ward going a bit nuts and sort of shaking things up and putting in people in weird positions or jostling up the lineup and putting in Backlund as a winger and Lindholm's a center and dogs and cats living together. But until I think they need to do something wacky and weird, I think it's going to be very paint by numbers in terms of the lineup. So we can all probably sketch out the lineup right now.
Yeah. The only thing I guys noticed like last night was when I noticed that Sam Bennett went up on the third line. I was wondering. Yeah, I think so. I think that was the third line because I know Dubé and Bennett were playing together towards the end of the game. So I thought that was interesting. But the Lucic, Ryan, and Dubé line is like actually my favorite line now.
They were the best line all season.
And I heard that they were super they were good at scrimmage, and I just think they're super fun to watch. They're the ones when they're on the ice. I like watching their chemistry. They seem like 3 guys that are completely different people, like personality wise, but maybe
you have the straight laced chemistry student. Young Derek Ryan has a bachelor's in science with a concentration in, I think, chemistry and pharmacology from U of A. So they call him Doc because his initials are DR, and he's a science guy. And hockey players are not really creative with their names, and that's the most creative name I've ever heard from a hockey player. Then you have Lucic, who sort of looks like a caveman and sort of very soft spoken and sort of crashes around. And then you have Dubé, who looks like a caveman facially now, and he's pure forecheck. So it's one of those things where they got thrown together in November. I think it was either Phoenix or Vegas in November on a back-to-back because Sam Bennett got hurt the game before and couldn't play, and Dubé was the only one in Stockton at the time who could play the wing and knew everybody. So they didn't have in back-to-backs. They never do morning skates. They never do practices. It's basically you play a game, you run to the other town, you play the next game, and then you go home. And so in a situation where they had no practice time, the only guy who really fit the bill is Dubé. And they threw him in there and said, try your best. And he's played like he does not want to go back to Stockton, California since November. And I can't see them sending him back to Stockton, California, partially because Stockton is not a very nice city to live, I'm told. Forbes magazine, someone sent, when the Flames announced their affiliate was there, a friend of mine sent me a link to a Forbes magazine article with the phrase, most depressing town in America, and the picture of Stockton. I've been told the arena is very nice. I've been told there are several areas around the arena which are very nice. I've been told there are other places that are not around the arena which are less nice. But I don't know. It's they've played in weirder cities. I mean, the Flames had an affiliate in Salt Lake City. The Flames had an affiliate in Moline, Illinois, Omaha, Nebraska, Abbotsford, which is a nice town surrounded by cattle farms and butcheries and stuff. So there's always kind of a weird smell apparently around the arena in Abbotsford.
That doesn't surprise me. I grew up the first 9 years of my life in Chilliwack, so which is 20 minutes away from Abbotsford. So
home of the Bruins.
Yeah.
We miss you, Roman Horak.
Yes. I was going to say though, I think at some point I would like to have the beard off between Dylan Dubé and Elliot Friedman. I think that would be some epic content to measure and look at. Because I believe as we speak, Elliot Friedman's beard is growing another 3 feet. As we speak.
Dubé, the last time Dubé shaved, Dubé was clean shaven the morning of March 8th when they played against Vegas. That was the last game that counted the Flames played it. And then he was going to shave the morning of the 11th when they were going to, 11th or 12th, whatever the day it was. Whatever day they were supposed to play the Islanders next. The 11th, I think. And then they never played. They were never called to the arena to play that day, so he just never shaved. And then that was 4 months ago. And he looks like a completely different person.
He just decided he just wasn't going to shave until
that's
whenever.
That is what he told us, and I think that's just hilarious and adorable. And I have a lot of time for Dylan Dubé because he does ridiculous things like that. Last 2 years during training camp, his family lives in Cochrane, so he just stayed with his parents and drove in from his parents' basement to play in the NHL, which is the most endearing thing I can possibly think of a young 20-something doing. Just, living the slacker life in your parents' basement and then going to your full-time job playing in the NHL. He's living everybody's dream.
Yeah.
And he gets to play for his hometown team, which I think is, it's cool. I was a big Joe Coburn guy. I had a soft spot in my heart for someone who grew up in the city being able to play for his hometown team. And, he made his money, so good for you, Joe. Nicest guy you're ever going to meet, Joe Coburn. I'm pretty sure if I'd asked Joe Coburn for Oregon or something, like, Joe, I need an extra kidney, he probably would have given it to me without actually asking what I needed it for.
Oh,
I just needed an extra one. I was going to keep it in a cooler, keep it in a jar full of brine just to look at it.
fair.
And I just wanted to mention too, if we're talking about beards too, and talking about Sam Bennett, the beard and the mustache going on now is
the whole reason. Jeff's just trying to load up one line with the most beard he can. He's like the two most scruffy guys in the team, and Lucic. That's the third line. That's a playoff line. They look like a playoff line.
Yeah, and then now I'm wondering, like, if Elias Lindholm's going to think about growing out a man bun.
Oh yeah, and have the man bun line.
The man bun line on the top line there.
Yeah,
they need a stick. They can't share Gatorade anymore, so they need a stick.
The first line has man buns. The third line has beards. Who's on the second line? Mangiapane, Backlund, and Tkachuk.
They're the conversation line.
Yeah. They'll figure out something. They can't all have themes.
Why not? Actually, they're the sandwich line.
They're the sandwich line? Why?
Mangiapane, bread.
Oh, yeah.
Cheese, Backlund, like bacon.
Okay, I see it. I guess so.
I stretch. Reach.
I've never related more to Michael Backlund in my life as a human being. When I think Kristen Anderson from Post Media on a call asked him what he was bringing to the bubble, he said he was going to get some Swedish coffee from his hometown ship because he's apparently very particular with his coffee. I'm like, so you just don't want to have to deal with hotel coffee? I feel like that's he's a man after all of our hearts because nobody likes hotel coffee. I've stayed in the hotel they're staying in, and the hotel coffee at that hotel is particularly hotel-y. So he made a smart choice. I didn't know that he was such a coffee snob, but that was an interesting thing to learn about. I actually learned about that secondly, I heard it from Kristen Anderson, but first I actually saw it on his Instagram because he was so excited that he posted a photo of the giant box that he got on his Instagram. It's kind of fun that he's been in the organization for 13 years and we're still learning new things about him.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I think are we still working through all the forwards?
Yeah, I don't know. Now Kevin decided to disappear. He was like, "Oh, those guys are on a tangent now about coffee and all that stuff." I think the top six will be decent. I think the big challenge is will they be 2019 regular season first line or 2019 playoffs first line, because I think Sportsnet ran a graphic during the exhibition game the other night, and it basically said here's 5 to 6 Flames forwards. I think they had everybody but Mangiapane because he was in the fourth line, and that would completely ruin their comparison. But I think the big five, the first line plus Tkachuk and Backlund combined for 5 goals in the entire first round series last year. So if they could combine for 5 goals again, that would be not good because they need more than that.
Where are you on Lindholm being a center or a winger? What's your position on that?
I don't hate it, but my sub question would be, what are you trying to accomplish? Because the big challenge is they got no guys who play the right side who can shoot right-handed. And if you take one of them away, you're basically solving one problem by making the other problem worse. And I would argue that their lack of right shots on the right side is a massive problem. I mean, the guys who play the right side right now are top to bottom. Lindholm's a righty. Kachuk is playing the off wing, and he's a lefty because Mangiapane's better on the left side. Then they have Dubé playing the off wing, and he's a lefty because Lucic prefers the left side, especially with a right-handed center. And then they have Toby Reeder, who's a lefty. So of their entire team, they have 8 guys who play the wing, and one of them is a righty, and their solution is let's make him a center because who cares about right and left wing? Let's just all have 8 guys who shoot left on the left wing. That'll be fine. So I don't know. Like, if somebody's hurt and you want to shake it up, maybe. I mean, Derek Ryan's been good on the right wing when he's been asked to play it, but I think he's better at center because I think he's a better face-off guy than anyone else they have. Lindholm's not bad at center. He's good. He's good in different ways than Monahan. But then you have the question of what do you do with Monahan? Putting Backlund on the wing seems like a weird thing to do. He's not great at it, but he's not terrible. He's better at center. So yeah, like the only regular center who can play the wing just as well as Bennett, and if they're bumping out Jankowski potentially to put in Bennett at center because they want him at center for whatever reason, then why shuffle? Why make things worse on the wings? Because they're already taking away a decent winger from the side. So I don't know. I think he could do it, but I think the big challenge for Lindholm would be you gotta just decide what he is and let him stay at it. I mean, we saw. Granted, I think Lindholm's a much more developed player. He's much more done as a player in terms of his development than Bennett was. But telling a guy every year you're a winger, now you're a center, now you're a winger, now you're a center, and sort of screwing with his head like that in terms of what he's supposed to do. I think when players think too much on the ice, that's when they get in trouble because they don't play. They just freeze and go, "What am I supposed to do?"
Right.
And if they get into that trap too much, then you have a bunch of guys sort of just running around like clowns going, "What am I supposed to do in the situation?" instead of just playing. So I can't see them doing that in the playoffs. They might do it again in the regular season. I think it depends on, if Ward's back, I think he'd probably prefer him on the wing, but that's just me guessing based on how he's used him. I mean, outside of that first full shuffle, it seems like everybody on the team, player-wise, is comfortable with everybody in their natural positions. So we'll see what happens, but there's a lot of different things they could do.
Yeah, and it depends on acquisitions and stuff. Heidi, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
I have a sort of not team-related question. So if you have any more of those kinds of questions, Kevin.
Nope. Go for it.
Okay, Ryan, I have a question about a tweet that you put out earlier today.
Ooh, I love tweets.
About the one that said, so I'll read this out for anybody listening. It says, I'm willing to bet cash money that Mark Giordano will play in the new building in 24-25 when it is apparently set to open. So how much money? How much money?
I'd say good $20.
Okay, that's
in this economy, that's expensive. That's a lot, actually.
For context, our colleague at the Athletic, Murat Atas, who is fantastic. If you want to follow him for Jets stuff, he's at WPG Murat, Murat. He's great. I love his stuff. He collaborated with Scott Cruikshank on a piece talking about the Flames from a Jets fan perspective, and the quote that he cherry picked from Scott's piece that he loved to praise was about Giordano, and the quote he tweeted was, "To put Giordano's age in perspective, he and the Saddle were welcomed into the world within 2 weeks of each other. The latter is scheduled to be torn down, and the player, well, he's still going strong." So based on that, I quote tweeted that saying, I'm willing to bet money that Giordano is still playing in 2024. Because
that's 4 years from now, yeah?
Yeah, he'll probably still be playing in Calgary. I mean, he's a hockey unicorn. He'll play out his contract here, and now that they've gotten rid of the weird 35-plus salary cap rule, for those of you who are unaware of the dumbest rule in the CBA, and there are many dumb rules in the CBA, the dumb rule that they fixed is it used to be that players used to be, if you sign a contract after you turn 35, if you retired, the cap hit didn't go away. if you are, say, 25 and you play normally, and then you decide to retire, your cap hit disappears. So it was a weirdly ageist way of just sort of penalizing teams for investing in older players. So as a result, what happens with older players is it was just a series of one-year contracts. So it's weirdly stressful for the older players because you have to negotiate every year and you don't know if you have a job, and it's very dumb and silly. But they had to be very dumb and silly because they were in a system that built it that way. So one of the things they got rid of in that is now, say, if Giordano, he'll be 38 when his contract's up. 38? Yeah, 38 when his contract's up. If he signs for like 5 years and he retires after 3, his salary cap will just disappear. His cap hit will disappear. So based on that, I can see them signing him for my guess is when his contract expires or a year before his contract expires, him and Treliving will sit down and he'll say, Mark, how long you want to play here? And then Mark will go, I don't know, how long you want me? And then they'll have like a weird circular conversation for like 10 minutes and then be like, 5 years it is. And then they'll just make up a number and that'll be what he gets. But yeah, right now, coincidentally enough, the only player who's under contract in the Flames for when the new building opens is Rasmus Anderson. So, it'd be kind of nice if they have a left shot defenseman who can play in the new building too. So I figured, Giordano will be 41, but he's also like a cyborg unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really play a lot of hockey. He was like 28 because hockey's weird, and he didn't start getting Norris votes until he was 30, which is, I don't know, not many guys find another gear in their game when they're 30. Most people start losing parts of their game when they turn 30, and then their 40s are just some sort of weird hodgepodge of trying to stave off oblivion. So for Giordano, he'll I think having him christen the new building would be kind of fun. But maybe they'll bring back Ginla for that. They can coax him out of retirement. I don't know. He seems like he's still in good shape.
He'd play well with Montana.
He could probably still play. Let's be honest. Iggy never really stopped working out. He could probably still play.
Probably.
But he'd be Zach Ronaldo good.
Yeah, there we go. So what do you have, Ryan, coming up for Flames Nation? What do you got going on, and how are you covering the team? You're not in Edmonton. Spoiler alert for those. So how are you covering the team? And maybe give a comment from your perspective and not being there trying to cover this team, what the pros and the cons of this are, because there has been some controversy about this.
Oh yeah.
If you're following Thomas Drance on Twitter, as an example,
it's a little inside baseball. So disclosure: I am a dues-paying member of the Professional Hockey Association. Behind me, it's a podcast, not a. We're not going to publish the web thing, but I have my PHWA card in my just behind me on my lanyard. So I paid my dues, so they're not mad at me this year. So effectively, what ended up happening was easiest way to explain it. So what ended up happening was originally when the NHL was putting together their bubble, they're going essential personnel only, which the PHWA is like, that makes sense. We can live with there being no media allowed because that would make a lot of sense. We're not really. It's not essential for us to be there. It's a nice to have. It's these. You get better stuff when you're there, and you can sit down. Some of the best stuff I've done is just from sitting down with players and going, let's just. I've had conversations with Rasmus Anderson and Michael Backlund and Michael Frolik, for example, being like, I'm going to explain to me what the hell you're doing in the power play. Like, just sit me down and sort of walk me through what the hell's going on. And you can't really do that in a Zoom call, like saying, hey, I'll hold up a whiteboard. You can sort of, tell me what's going on. So you lose some of those kind of things, but it's a pandemic, and I think organizationally the PHWA or the stance was, it's a weird situation. We're not going to make a big fuss if we're not in there, but no one else is in there. It's fine. We'll work our way around it. So the way it was related to the membership was at the 11th hour, the NHL went, oh yeah, so here's the deal. We're going to bring in some NHL.com writers. See ya. We're like, wait, what? Well, yeah, like there's going to be no outside media, but we're going to bring in 3 writers for each hub from NHL.com. And this is nothing against people from NHL.com. They're lovely people. They do good work. They have some very specific rules about what they can and cannot say, and they work for the NHL. So that itself means that if things go well, and there's no controversy, then, you'll just have them. They can't talk about concussions. They can't talk about fighting. They can't, in a playoff year, like example, when there was a goalie fight in a Flames game this year, NHL.com couldn't really talk about the goalie fight. I think they snuck it in there, but they had to go through multiple iterations to try to fit it in, because how can you tell the story of that game without talking about the goalie fight? So NHL.com has some restrictions, but I think they still do some good work there. But the issue was being right now, the only people who are sort of inside the bubble are the 3 people from NHL.com in each city and a content creator from each team. So right now there are, in the 2 hubs combined, 30 media people, all of whom are employed by the NHL or NHL franchise, which is kind of weird when they're doing like a once-in-a-lifetime, weird, crazy, no one's really sure if they're going to pull it off kind of bubble system. So, regardless of what happens, like one way or the other, this is going to be a Stanley Cup final, Stanley Cup playoff year that is going to be miraculous in history and a complete and utter one-off crazy situation. And all the storytelling of it is going to be primarily done by NHL employees. So it's weird. If the NHL.com folks weren't involved and it was just sort of, every team's going to have like a cameraman in there or something, I think it will be easier to swallow, because you're like, well, it's not like, the teams are the teams and, they're going to tell their stuff, and everyone's on, the NHL outlets and us on the outside, everyone will be in the same boat. But sort of, I don't know, it's, there's a long history of the NHL and NHL clubs. Not all clubs. I'll just say this, the Flames, I've been covering the team for 10 years. The Flames have only been, easy for me to work with. And, they allowed some loudmouth jerk who worked primarily on Twitter and message boards to, cover the team intently when they had no reason to. So I have nothing but positive things to say about the Flames. There are many other teams who I've dealt with. The Panthers, for example, Thomas Drance worked for the Panthers, and he continued a very long stretch of very good PR folks for the Panthers. There's a lot of teams that are really easy to work with, and, some of them are less easy to work with. And the NHL in general has sort of tried to claw back at sort of some access things, setting a set number of players, set number of times, set number of things, a lot of little things like that. So it's sort of a lot of the pushback, I think, from more senior people in the PHWA, as a much more junior person, I think comes from the history of the conversation that we've had between our organization and the NHL, where there's sort of been a gradual clawing back or an attempt to claw back in successive negotiations over the years. And, now it's sort of, I think everyone's terrified to a certain degree of, this is the new normal. Like, we're just not going to, be able to talk to players like people, but it'd just be nothing but Zoom and sort of very, very orchestrated, not in no way casual interactions. So I don't know. I'm just inside baseball. Scrum journalism sucks, because scrum journalism is like here. This is a nice setting because it's 3 of us having a conversation. This is when you get the best conversation and the best stuff, because it's a natural human interaction that in no way feels forced or orchestrated. If I were trying to talk to you guys and there was like 15 cameras facing me and like 8 people holding microphones and stuff like that, I'd be much less relaxed. I'd give you cliches. I'd sort of, give you a lot. This would be a boring conversation if there was like 15 people pointing microphones at me, because it'd be very contrived and orchestrated and tense. And there's a reason why so many of the best writers rely on relationships and rely on sort of after stuff. Like Eric Tahachuk's fantastic, and Eric Tahachuk, he isn't the type of person who's sort of, climbing over the local television camera guy to get his recorder in to get his, 5-second quote from Connor McDavid about the power play scoring a goal. He relies on, talking to coaches after practice and talking to players, after games, stuff like that. And, that's the kind of stuff that we're not going to be able to get. Hopefully we get it again, but I don't know. It's for me, it's going to be kind of weird. I've covered a few playoffs. It's always a little bit more hectic. There's more people around, a little more tense. But the nice thing is, instead of schlepping myself to and from the Saddle Dome, several times a day, I get to hide out in my apartment, build a blanket fort, watch the games from it. You have to drink during the games. Spoiler, during the games, if you're in the press box, you don't get to drink. So if it's a particularly uninteresting game, like the game that was happening on Tuesday night, you can crack open a beverage and enjoy it from the comfort of your own home. So there's some goods in this situation. I think everyone's sort of been forced out of their comfort zone a bit, and I think hopefully when we come out the other side of this, we end up sort of finding the stuff that worked in the situation and adapting. But at the other end, I think there's a certain amount of nervousness about it. I mean, let's be honest, in the grand scheme of things, the concerns of a couple hundred professional media members isn't really that doesn't amount to a hill of beans in the context of 2020. So I don't think this is really going to be something that that much of a fuss is going to be kicked up over. But I think when I hate saying the phrase new normal, but when the world returns to something resembling a functional, safe, healthy structure, and there's some normalcy, I don't know if we'll have normal the same way we did before societally, but as we get back to something resembling normalcy, then I think folks will have conversations about, okay, well, what kind of stuff of this do we actually like? I mean, from being able to do some job functions from home, that's kind of nice. Sometimes you just miss going to the rink and having human interactions.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of remember what human interactions were like.
They're part of the olden times.
People.
Yeah.
So they're in a nutshell. There's far too much history about the PHWA.
Well, it's good to know. It's good to know to get all of that perspective. And thank you, Ryan, for coming on. And we'll have to have you on again, maybe after this series is over, to do a little bit of a breakdown. But flamesnation.ca. Ryan, how do we follow you on Twitter?
I'm at Ryan and Pike. And between now and whenever the Flames get knocked out of the playoffs, I'm going to be chained to a radiator, just writing content until the series is over.
That's fair. We'll be doing live stuff. Heidi, how do we follow you?
You can follow me at HeidiMazeballs on Twitter and everywhere on social media.
All right, and we've got Sean Beardy Canuck 03, which we heard live last night, recapping the Canucks Wild exhibition game. And then we've got Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. Tyler is at T-Noble. Devin, Gordhow09. Me, KEVOLE, podcast_hockey, etc., etc. iTunes, Google, Spotify, etc. Ryan, thanks for taking the time. It was great. Heidi, thanks as well. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.